Welcome to the Underdog Chronicles. Today's guest is a first-generation American who grew up in South Overland Park and over the past 8 years has built a marketing agency that has dominated the Kansas City area, growing it to 10 team members. They've worked with brands like Starbucks, NASCAR, QuickTrip, and also used their abilities to give back to places like Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Kansas City, the Negro Leagues Museum, and not only that, but he's turned the skill and the art of capturing attention online into owning his own sports team. So with that being said, let's dive right in. Yeah, I mean, take us through, how did you get into business, right? You went to KU for a stint, transferred out, and then you decided, hey, I'm gonna go from making beats in my dorm room to starting this agency.
Yeah, no, for sure. So, growing up, I was a really creative kid. Grew up in the arts. My father was a musician. My mom was incredibly supportive and a great connector. So I had a really supportive household growing up to just experiment and try and learn who I was. And funny enough, I learned later on that, who I was at 11, 12, 13 years old was actually who I was meant to be. And so I try and make sure that, everything I do now kind of leads back to, who would Sam at 12, want to be, and who would he be proud to, to be. And so as I went to college, I was at KU for a few years. I was, making music, making friends, just enjoying the vibe, right? And towards the end of my freshman year, someone close to me passed away to suicide, and it really sent me into just a terrible mental spiral, and it impacted me very heavily to the point where I essentially retracted from all social settings. And even though I had joined a fraternity of some great guys as well, a smaller fraternity called DBT at KU, I just was feeling out of touch and not connected to the things that I loved anymore because of that, that trauma. And I still remember, I couldn't sleep. I would drive out to the Campanile and just read all night. And it was a really hard time. And so I needed a change. And so I, came home one night and I was like, Dad, Mom, I'm dropping out. I'm gonna go do whatever. I don't even know what I was gonna do. And my dad was like, No, you're not. I was like, okay. And he's like, you can move schools though. I'm like, all right, that's fair, sure. So then I moved to UMKC because I'm like, well, I want to be somewhere where things are advancing. And while Lawrence was fun and an amazing time, it felt that it was maybe disconnected from the reality that I was hoping to achieve for myself. And so moving to UMKC gave me that chance to really, start to assimilate and connect to entrepreneurship and business and just personal growth. And so as I come to UMKC, I remember very vividly talking to my dad, and we were, out having a cigar together, and I was like, I don't know anybody. How, at the time I was 19 and whatever, and I'm like, I don't even know where to start, and I have no idea what to do or what I'm doing, right?
You grew up in South OP, right?
Mm-hmm, yes.
So none of the kids went to UMKC? Was it all KU and MU?
It was, a lot of people from KU. There were some people I knew at KU, but, when it was in the Kansas City sphere, right, in the downtown UMKC, a lot of my high school connections were not necessarily, present there. And frankly, growing up in high school, I didn't have a ton of friends. I had a lot of acquaintances, but, I definitely grew up as a black sheep and, just didn't connect with a lot of the people there on a real level. And so when I came to the city, I realized I had to somewhat reinvent myself. Little did I know I had to reinvent myself to my original, V1 Sam Kulikov at 12 years old, but that's besides the point. So, my dad's like, you just start talking to people and just, connecting. And so what happened was I came to the city, I'm at UMKC, and I started a nonprofit, and it's focused on, initially was focused on suicide prevention, and it was connected back to, my friend who had passed away. And we had hosted some events, etc. And then I was like, wait, I want to do more than just, host one event. I want to try and really make an impact. And so I ended up creating something called the Left Right Initiative at the time, which was basically focused on using the arts to connect people to opportunities and to personal growth and development. And I was 19 at the time, right? So I'm like, don't need really to make money. I'm, my scholarships and stuff are taking care of my room, right? So I'm like, yeah, let's do nonprofit stuff. Let's make an impact. Let's help people. And so, it was music-based, it was creative-based. So, at KU, I had started creating content in the form of music. making beats, recording musicians, etc. And so I joined a studio at an internship. And that's what I used as like my grounding pole for connection. And so what I did was through the Left-Right initiative and my partnerships with school districts like Paseo, where I worked with students there, and then also bringing students and young people from the city into the studio.
Bro,
so
you worked with Paseo?
Yeah.
That's where I graduated high school.
Nuh-uh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So I was out there, showing them how to make beats, showing them how to record, right? Because I wanted, to hopefully help some kids build a resume before they left high school, because we have a lot of kids here in Kansas City that are disadvantaged for a lot of different reasons. And so I always led with my heart, and I wanted to be that connector, be that person who shared things that I was finding or lessons I was learning so others could be great. And we were at 825 Studios making beats, recording music. At the time, I'm connecting to all of the, now matured rappers in Kansas City. They were 13, 14. I'm DMing them on Twitter. I'm like, yo, I got a studio. Like, y'all should pull up. Like, let's just make some beats. And, coming from high school where I really didn't have any great connections other than a few of my best friends, like being this person who could like bring people and offer something, like it was very much so gratifying, and it felt good, right? And especially because I was working with a lot of our students from either Paseo or around the city. They would bike 30 minutes to get to the studio, and we would not only talk about music and things like that, but we also talked about mental health and things of that nature. And I remember one of my students at the time, I was like 19, so I was like a child still, but I remember them saying like they were going through some things and they were explaining it to me, and I was like, that's anxiety. And they're like, I don't know what that is. And so I realized that like there was a lot to be done that I would hope to change, and just change in my small world, right? Which then translated into the future of what I do now, which we'll get into. But long story short, I'm making beats, I'm at the studio, I'm grinding, I'm at UMKC, going through the entrepreneurship program, getting my entrepreneurial degree, building out my nonprofit, doing all these different things. And then at that same time, I reach out to Made Mob, which at the time was Made Urban Apparel.
And for anybody who's not aware, Made Mob is an apparel company here in Kansas City.
Yep, so they've been in business now for about 13 years. And I reached out and I was like, hey, I don't have any skills, but like, you wanna, cook some stuff up? Like, I'm down to help. I don't know what with, but I like, please. And they were, very gracious enough to give me an opportunity and a chance to build with them. And so over my 2 years at UMKC, I was building my nonprofit, getting entrepreneurship experience, working in the studio, working with Made Mob, running a shop, just doing different, small tasks here and there, but especially learning from my environment. That was one of the things that has made me as successful as I am and will carry me into my later years, is that I'm always interested in learning. And I want to learn and I want to get better. And my ego is never present in the room when I'm around, situations and people that I know that I can gain from, right? And I always strive to put myself in those positions because, if I'm the smartest person in the room, there's a problem because,
you're in the wrong room.
Yeah, my ceiling's definitely not that high yet, right? So I need to build. So anyways, I learned so much from, Jesse and Lance and Max and Sky and all these guys at Made Mob and Vu and Mark that showed me the power of belief, discipline, partnership, community. Like they were hosting block parties, they were doing all these collaborations, and I took from that, and I really actually paid attention and studied game, even when it was just some intangible thing, right? Yeah. Like I was soaking up game at every moment I possibly could.
And did you know that it was game at that point?
No.
Or looking back, you're like, oh, okay, I'm kind of, like you said, you're soaking it up, but you didn't really realize what it was at that time.
100%. And one of the things that, I realized was that one of my superpowers, obviously, ADHD is something that I've dealt with for my whole life.
You and me both, brother.
And it does make you a good entrepreneur at times, but also has its own, challenges. But one of the things that, has given me a lot of life and a lot of success is finding the synergies between things that maybe you wouldn't have previously, right? So I work in all these different industries. I know all these different people. I'm a science geek. I'm a history geek. Like, I love music. I love the arts. I love literature. I'm studying different languages. So I'm doing all these things just because I like them, but I don't realize that I'm actually laying the foundation for my neural network pathways being built, which is like, yes, you can learn about thermodynamics and apply that to, lighting a studio, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever, right? So from Made Mob, that helped me lay that foundation of being able to apply pressure and actually get reps in. So long story short, I come to graduate, it's coming up, right? And my parents are talking to me and they're like, hey, you're gonna have to pay for your apartment and stuff soon. So are you,
Bills?
What are you doing? And I'm like, well, I've got this nonprofit thing. And they're like, yeah, okay, well, there's got to be something else, right? Maybe think about that. So I start going around all these different agencies. I'm applying, and I can't seem to land a gig, right? So I'm applying to all the big agencies. I'm talking to mentors. I'm talking to all these people. My mom at the time is at the Kansas City Chamber helping me connect and make these relationships. And, I'm a people person, but my skills weren't fleshed out yet. So I didn't have enough to bring to the table to elicit an actual opportunity.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to start my own thing, right? And at the time, I was focused on strategy and brand building and kind of pulling my experience from Made Mob and my nonprofit. And I wanted to create something that had this allure of formality or something. And so the name was Wakefield Strategics. Literally just found some random area in England or whatever. And so I start this, strategy business, and this would have been 2018, early that year. And I'm just starting, have no skills. I mean, literally, don't know how to use a camera, don't know how to use Adobe, don't know how to sell, don't know how to market. I know how stories are told and I know how to communicate, and that's pretty much it, right? And so fast forward a few months, it's March, April of my graduation year. It's coming up quick. And I'm working with my dad as a part-time BOA at his Edward Jones office. So my dad was kind of helping me get some experience and getting some paychecks to start things out. And then I get a call from my buddy Brandon, and Brandon was like, hey, I'm doing this agency thing, and I don't even necessarily remember exactly what we were talking about or how it started, but I remember where I was. I was at the gym in Westport, and I remember thinking okay, I'm gonna meet up with Brandon at Starbucks, and I'm like, I have no idea what this is.
The startup entrepreneurs meetup place.
I mean, and you're just like, what the shit are we gonna do? This is gonna be a nothing burger, right? I'm like, I have no idea, whatever. Well, let's just meet, I don't know. So we meet up, and he's like, hey, I'm gonna build websites, do the SEO, and you just help me sell. And I'm like, perfect, let's do it. And so long story short, we start advancing, and then pretty quickly we land our first gig, which was brought to me from a connection of mine from Matthew Lawson, who I also grew up with. Basically the first gig we had was working on the campaign for Greg Orman. So he was running for governor, I think, against Laura Kelly and Chris Kobach at the time. And so we're filming and doing all this stuff, and Brandon's like, dude, you're doing so much more, let's just split and let's just be 50-50. And so we start building the business, and that's how it all started. And literally Brandon had some experience building websites and coding, and I had literally no experience at all. And I bought my first camera on a credit card, bought Adobe on a credit card, had no idea how to use it. And really everything started with that and a free subscription to YouTube University.
I love it, man. Okay, so take us back, right? You're going to college, right? What, out of all the opportunities that you had, because what did you say you went for? Entrepreneurship, and did you have a minor in something?
It was entrepreneurship and innovations management, but it was a marketing focused degree.
Okay.
But I knew I wanted to be in business. I just had no clue what I was going to do.
So what drew you to the agency model? Because you started your own strategic business, which is kind of an agency in a sense, right? And then Brandon came into the picture and was like, hey, here's this agency thing. What drew you to that over all the other possibilities out there?
I just wanted to help people. I liked telling stories, connecting. I found out later on with more introspection that one of the things that brings me most joy is connecting great products and great things to people, right? I want to share, things that I find and great, things with other people, and like, ask any of my friends or, my family. It's like when I find a new book or when I find a new thing, like I'm like, this is it. Like, I swear to God.
It's the ADHD talking, bro.
I swear, right? And like, if I don't like it, I'm like, don't even care. Like, I don't even know what you're talking about. So that's really what drew me to it, was like, oh, I can help people. And this is something I can build. Like, mind you, I had no previous experience watching any like videos on marketing, like nothing. There was no marketing books read. There was nothing. Like, it was just like, I love stories. I love branding. I love music and arts. Like, I'm just gonna try and do this. And like, that was literally the motivator. And it kind of goes back to show you that, one of the things I tell people often is that you and I are not smart enough to know what opportunities are gonna change our lives. And so the only thing that we can actually do is prepare, train, and be ready for every moment, and to make sure that we're following those like internal instincts and taking advantage of opportunities with intent. Right? Because, like I said with Brandon, I was like, I don't know what this is. I don't have any skills. Like, what are we going to do? And then all of a sudden, it's my life for 10 years now. Right?
Yeah, 100%. Sometimes when I'm talking with newer entrepreneurs, and I'll have somebody reach out to me every once in a while that's like, hey, what should I do? And I'm like, well, what I would recommend, and this is what me and Brendan did when we started out, is we didn't know if it was going to be websites, funnels, SEO, video content. So we just did a buffet approach, and we looked at, hey, do we like this thing? No, not really. Do we like this thing? Well, we like the way it tastes, but not when we make it, right? We like it when somebody else makes it. How about this one? Oh, this one we can make and it tastes really good, right? So that's kind of something that I tell people is, when you're not sure what to do, the worst thing you can do is nothing.
Yep.
Right? So, just put yourself out there, get some different skills, and you'll find what you like. But if you never take that first step, right, you'll never actually know. So, okay, fast forward, right? You start this agency, and nowadays, you guys are working with some of the biggest brands. I mean, Starbucks, NASCAR, QuickTrip. Like, how did you go from, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, to the biggest brands in the world?
Yeah, well, it's definitely, a long journey, and it definitely didn't, start with like our master plan of like, all right, one day we're gonna, go and be in, Saudi Arabia or whatever, right? But it was really humble beginnings. And so, Brandon and I we started in his parents' basement, building websites. Our first client was literally building websites for Barkley for Spirit Airlines. Like, that was one of our first clients after Greg Orman. So we're like, whoa, this is like nuts, right?
So you guys were like subcontracting out for Oakley?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
So we were, connected in, and it was a crazy project, and we were a little bit over our skis there, but like, we got it done. And we were like, okay, that was like a lot. So like, maybe we just like do ads and media and video, but we're like, let's just explore and grow. So we're building, and I'm like, look, dude, Brandon, we got to move downtown. Like, we got to get a small office, because like, if we're not downtown, then we're not going to be connecting, and we're not going to be networking and building relationships. Like, it's great to build in the lab, right? But like, you got to get out there. And so I convinced him to get an office. It's not like I had to twist his arm or anything, but I'm like, let's get an office at Crossroads in PlexPod, right? So we get our first office, PlexPod. It was like $600-700 a month, like in this tiny ass.
Yeah, because that's how we connected, if you recall.
Yep.
We were in the PlexPod in Lenexa. And so I think you guys were there one day, and I was like, I know you guys.
Yeah.
So
because we were using the studio.
Yep.
Because they had the white cyc wall. So we were there at the Crossroads, and then long story short, to kind of fast forward a little bit, we're working, we're building, we're getting people onboarded in terms of teams, and we're finding new clients. Along the way, we end up finding a connection to Jake and his company Trendsetters. So there's actually a photo of like us three at a studio, and it's like, Social Apex, Wakefield, and Trendsetters, and like we combined forces, right? So we get together, we start building, we start executing, we're getting clients, we're building, we're doing SEO, we're doing website stuff, we're doing video, we're doing a lot, right? We're picking up some steam. Along the journey, we get connected to our now managing partner and one of my close friends and business partners, Mark, where he was running a consulting agency at the time. So we meet with them on a weekend, and we're like, hey, we're running this business, but like, we're kids, we don't necessarily know what we're doing exactly, like what, you want to team up, like what are we doing here? And, long story short, like we, acquired their business, brought them on, and Mark became our CEO. And so with time, we built the agency, we started to narrow our focus. And, as we grow, and as many entrepreneurs know, people change their direction and they want to go do different things. And so as we progressed over that time, those 8-9 years, Jake went off to do his own thing. Brandon went off to do his own thing. And we really just then focused in on our capacity of our current team, which was content creation and building brand, right? And so after, a little bit of movement, we get into 2019, we're growing, we're slowly building the business up, and COVID hits. And as many marketing agencies know and entrepreneurs know, it's just stonewalled everything for a second, right? And we were like, it was like, the air got sucked out of the room, right?
Dude, I was in restaurant marketing at the time, so 90% of my clientele overnight.
Like literally overnight, just everything paused, everything stopped. And so at the time, as fate would have it, I was connected to a friend of mine, his name's LJ, who was 16, I believe, at the time. And he and I had been connected over a couple years. And he was like getting into this gaming thing. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. Like, sure, I played games growing up, but I don't know what you're talking about. So then over COVID, we connected LJ and I meet with him. And he's like, dude, I want to do this like eSports thing. Like, I want to build this like brand and do this thing. And I'm like, okay. Yeah, I can see that. And we didn't have like a logo, we didn't have a bank account, like didn't have like any of that stuff. So I went to Mark and I'm like, dude, like what if we like support this business and like start this as well? Like, things are stalling right now on the marketing side. So like, why not repurpose some of our creative energy over here? So we end up getting together, me, Mark, and then Alex and LJ and Jeremy. So we create this business. And essentially, we start up this business during the height of COVID, which was a catalyst for gaming to explode and grow. Obviously, everyone's at home. We initially gain a $25,000 investment from a family friend in a pre-seed round. And what ends up happening is we use that to acquire a team in Rocket League, where we signed one of the like worst performing teams in the region or in the entire sport the season prior. And we signed one of the players who was 13 at the time, wasn't even like authorized to play yet. His name was BeastMode. And so he was this young prodigy, like, cracked, super dope guy. So we signed this team and we end up building and growing. And what do you know? We end up being one of the best teams in the entire world. And so fast forward to the end of that season, after some time, we're picking up a lot of attention, etc. We're starting to gain sponsors. We pick up DoorDash as a sponsor in our first year, which we were the first team that DoorDash had ever sponsored in gaming. And so then we end up selling that contract for that Rocket League team to Shopify, who has their own esports team and is very prolific now in the scene, actually. So Shopify Rebellion. So we sold that roster to Shopify. And then we use that as momentum to go out and build new teams, build new rosters, build new staff, protocols, gain more investment. So along the way, we end up getting into new titles: Rainbow Six, Call of Duty, Gears of War. We end up winning multiple championships in Gears of War at the time. We get into different Rocket League regions, and over that time, we bring on sponsors like DoorDash, Jackstack, G Fuel, Price Chopper, QuickTrip, etc. Right? And then the same time, we're working with NASCAR, the Royals, Sporting, and just recently the Chiefs. And so what ends up happening is the Pioneers continues to proliferate and grow and build. And Social Apex is that backbone. Our agency is that backbone for the Pioneers to create this awesome content from a very early stage. We were able to emit this like branding quality, right? Which helped us stand above the rest. And so with time, we ended up just continuing to grow on the Pioneers. And at the same time, Social Apex is gaining massive pedigree in the gaming space, understanding the younger consumer base, understanding newer protocols for marketing, for advertising, etc. And that's what leads us to then connecting to all this new client network, right? Like even, for example, we work with DoorDash's marketing agency to build gaming assets for their advertising, right? That was aside from the general partnership with the Pioneers. And so, it was really one of those things where we kind of accidentally built this sort of ecosystem of brands, right? Where we owned and operated Social Apex and we owned and operated the Pioneers, and they just so happened to like work together in union in a very beautiful way. So whenever we had an event, whether it was here or in, London or in, Germany or in Texas, like we were able to send our agency, get really great content, represent our brands very well. And that's what helped us, early on to bring in a lot of this attention. And ultimately, that was one of the big, pieces of the journey of Social Apex as well, was that it helped, bring credibility to us, right? And so, we just so happened to follow our passions, follow what made sense to us. And during COVID, it just made sense to build it. And so now, Pioneers are one of the, most well-known esports teams in the world, especially in North America, of course. And it's been one of these like really interesting stories where like I grew up never obviously thinking like you're going to own a sports team. Like that didn't ever cross my mind that would happen. And yet here we are. So that's kind of how it all came full circle and how Social Apex became, a mainstay brand where we're now working with, all those people in the entertainment space, but also taking that entertainment space experience and bringing it back home to Kansas City local brands like Charlie Hustle, American Jazz Museum, the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, other, brands like that, the YMCA. So we brought that storytelling we learned, but then we also got to participate in the gaming space as well as an agency. So it was this really awesome back and forth where you found this perfect balance of mutual benefit for both businesses. And that has been a massive, success, factor for us.
Yeah, it's almost like they're feeding each other.
100%.
And like in my agency, I have something that I call land and expand. So, when I was first getting started, I did some work for free to get my foot in the door. But what that allowed me to do was land that first client, and then I can expand using that, power base of people who know them. Hey, here's the results that we got for him, and then kind of ratchet, myself up that ladder to where now we're working with top 500 accounting firms who are like 0.05%, right? It's like working with, the Chiefs or the Royals compared to, little Johnny's baseball team, right? So curious from my own question here. So were the Pioneers, was that what got you in the foot with the sponsorships and then that translated over into clientele? Or was Social Apex getting the clients and then translating that over into sponsorships, or how did that work?
Yeah, so, it really is kind of a mixed bag, but in general, the Pioneers had such a takeoff during COVID. And for example, one of our games that we played in, I remember vividly, playing against some of the biggest teams in the world, and the viewership was over 300,000 people were watching us play, right? I mean, so you're like, this is just surreal. It's crazy, right?
How many football stadiums is that?
Right. And that was just one channel. That wasn't even like the affiliate watches. And so really what happened was, Social Apex helping to build that branded feel and that quality, enabled Pioneers to position themselves as, very much so a, championship level team. Well, one, we also had a championship caliber roster in Rocket League as our first team ever.
Talent.
Right? So we had the talent. We knew how to scout. By the way, BeastMode just won the world championship last year with another team, and one of our previous other signees in Rocket League won the year before, right? So we obviously understand how to scout, how to build championship level teams. But as well, Social Apex helped us capitalize on that and share that content, build the materials, right? And so Pioneers had this aura because we were the only gaming business, and we still are, gaming organization within like 500 to 600 miles of Kansas City, right? And at the time there was others in Pittsburgh, in Minnesota, et cetera, and now they're not there. So the closest teams are in Texas and Utah, really. So we realized pretty quickly we could, one, be that beacon and really lock in and connect. And so we built a lot of materials. We also brought in a ton of brand ambassadors that just wanted to be a part of what we were doing, and that helped a lot as well. So in the early stages, Andrew Wiley, Miko Hardman, Trey Smith, Armani Watts, we had Jack Sock, the tennis player. These were guys that we didn't even pitch that. They just loved gaming and they wanted to be a participant in what we were building. And so we had this crossover into the traditional sports space that then gave us this this flavor for brands where they're like, whoa, okay, so we can sponsor gaming, but also there's this traditional sports component, and it became very appetizing, to these brands, whether it was, like I said, G Fuel, Logitech, national, gaming brands, or local brands like Price Chopper, QuickTrip, Jackstack, and even DoorDash, right? As a national brand. And so a lot of what happened was we built that up. And then we ended up being able to, for example, we did a partnership with Sporting, right? Where we brought out one of our famous Call of Duty players, Doug Sensor Martin, to come film. We filmed this crazy commercial with an Ari, this huge camera, whatever. And it was all for the Pioneers, right? But then we connected with a good friend of mine now, Chad Reynolds, who was the CD there at the time. And we worked with him. He saw how good we were. And then he was like, cool, can you guys come back and help us with some things, right? So we helped out with some match coverage, things like that. So it was kind of this thing where we really attached to Pioneers. And by the way, a lot of what we did was just like our team did it for the love of the game, knowing the opportunity. When you talk about free, right? Like there's a lot of times where we were just like doing it because we knew that it would help the Pioneers and it would help the business gain credibility. And so I'm sure we'll touch on it later, but doing things free with a plan is actually a really effective strategy to build. So long story short, we're bringing on all these clients, and anytime we needed a pass off where it wasn't like a direct esports thing, it was like, cool, well, we have an agency to help. So it's created this very, exciting, connection where then we were able to not only take that to build with some of those clients, right? But then additionally, we were able to take that and say, cool, well, now we have this experience, let's go bring it to other clients that have nothing to do with esports and gaming.
Nice. So you guys were like a product of the product. So I run paid ads to get my own clients because we go nationwide, right?
Yeah.
There's only a certain amount of accounting firms in the Kansas City area, and that's who we specialize with a lot. And so it's funny when people come in from my paid advertising, they're like, so, what are you going to do for us? And I say, well, you know how you got here? And they're like, oh yeah, I love the experience. I said, well, I'm a product of the product. So the exact same thing that I built for myself is what we also build for you. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like that's exactly what you guys were able to do with the Pioneers, which then showcased not only the Pioneers by how you were able to scale them up, but also highlighted what Social Apex was able to do, like you said, in the esports, in the traditional sports, and in that corporate realm as well.
Yeah, 100%. That's exactly right.
That's awesome, man. So a lot of these skills that you're talking about, bringing in the A players, right? Having the branding. It's funny when I talk with clients sometimes, they're like, dude, you are so good on camera. Like, can you just do my ads for me? And I'm like, well, I had however many years of martial arts where I was going out, competing nationally, internationally, went to Spain and Italy to compete. And then on top of that, I also did theater.
Yep.
Right.
Same.
That's why I transferred from Rockhurst to Paseo. Actually, my grandma found. I was looking at transferring anyway because I kind of knew at that point. I was like, Mom, you're wasting your money. Like, why don't you send me to a public school? Because I know I'm not doing college. So my grandma actually found Paseo because it was a performing arts school, and I was very into acting that time. At that point, theatrical, and then also commercials, whatever else, Macy's runway type stuff.
Heck yeah.
And so I transferred to Paseo for that reason. And looking back, right, like at my 12, 13-year-old, at that point, 17-year-old self, I'm like, man, all these skills that I didn't realize were skills at that time are now translating into these monetizable skills through communication, through being able to capture and hook attention, through being able to tell a story where someone can step into those shoes and kind of ride that emotion and take themselves through that story. So like take us back. How do you feel like let's say that you're talking to that 12 or 13-year-old Sam, right? Who's maybe getting made fun of. I know for me, because I did cheer as well, right? Competitive cheerleading. And
I was a theater kid myself, so I know musical theater as well, which was an add-on.
So,
Yeah. One, I'd say, you're right. And, everything that you're doing is what you should be doing. And, it's hard when you're trying to fit in to remember that like this is your life, not everybody else's life. And so when you assimilate too much, you end up becoming the white sheep that you think you want to be, when you realize like, no, the purpose of a great life is to be your own person and to stand out, right? And so what I would have told him is like, you need to trust yourself. You need to remember the reason that you love doing these things. It has nothing to do with them. It has nothing to do with public opinion. You love to sing and to be on stage and to make music and to study history because you like it. You know, I was reading a ton at 11, 10, and I just liked it. But then you come into contact with reality, right? Where you are, you know, chastised and made fun of for being different. And, you know, a lot of those people that I grew up with that did that, I am, you know, friendly with now, right? Like I even, you know, have people that reach out from 10 years later and they're like, hey, you know, this was very evident that you were this person back then, and like, you know, really, you know, happy for you that you've done that, which is like very gratifying to hear, because you realize that like that was just them and their moment and their time, and it wasn't a personal thing, but of course it feels personal. But you realize like
teenagers are teenagers, right?
Right. And it's like you just have to trust yourself and to believe yourself. And, you know, it was hard, and it's hard to do that at a time where you're like, the most important thing to me is friends and connecting with people, because you're young. You want to build that rapport. And so it's like, well, do I care about reading more books or meeting girls? And it's like, well, you know, at this current moment, like there's that. So I think the main thing that I would share with him is like, you know, yes, you have ADHD. Yes, you are odd. Yes, you have different likes and dislikes than some of your peers. But your superpower is that you have things that you love, and that your ADHD refuses to allow you to work on things you don't care about. And although that might be a disability in the regular framework of school, it's actually one of the greatest skill sets any person can have. Because to your original point, people always ask me the same thing: what should I do? And my response is, well, what do you like doing? What do you enjoy? Because ultimately, a life working a job you don't like, I mean, you can do that if you want, but it's not necessarily as fulfilling as the alternative, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's what I would have really thought about. And that's where the synergies between like my ADHD and like success, I find some of those patterns, which is like, you are motivated by desire and dopamine. You do not care about a due date. You do not care about whatever. So when you're 12, 13, 14, you're like, I don't care. What is home? I don't care. I was a good student, but that was because I did all my work in class and I got it done before I even went home, and so I could game all the time.
Not me, dude. I was like a D student.
I was just like, I'm anxious about it. I'm just gonna do it now. And then I went home, and my parents were like, why don't you ever have homework? I'm like, I just do it when the teacher's talking. But yeah, that's the main thing. Is like, I am drawn to what I love, and I do what I like. And yes, that does come with its, you know, challenges, and like you have to learn to like, yeah, you got to care about hygiene, you got to care about financial wealth and health and whatever else, right? But ultimately, it gave me that chance to be like, go after something that you love and never let go of it. And that is something that you can't really teach anybody. They have to learn it for themselves. And if you don't have it instilled upon you very early on, it's very difficult to curate. And so I would have told him like, you need to keep following this. Your disabilities are your superpower, and the traditional framework that you exist inside of will be fragmented and destroyed within the next 20 to 30 years. So it doesn't matter what happens here anyways, right? And that's not to say school's not important and traditional avenues isn't important, but it's like, you're different. Lean into that. Don't lean away.
Yeah. Man, there's like a few quotes that come to mind, but have you ever heard the one, don't let your schooling get in front of your education?
No, but that's a good one.
Yeah. So, the other quote that it reminds me of, have you seen that picture where it's like the traditional schooling system and there's the teacher, but all the students are different animals, right? Mm-hmm. So you have like a giraffe, an elephant, a fish in a fishbowl, and a monkey. And the teacher says, okay, the test is to go climb that tree. And we're all gonna grade you based on the same thing, right? Have you ever seen that picture?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
No, but but it makes sense.
Yeah, it reminds me about what you're, talking about here, because it's like, when you have these strengths and you know what these strengths are, and you try and improve your weaknesses, sometimes, not always, but sometimes it's like trying to teach a pig to fly. Whereas instead, your time might be better spent learning how to roll around in the mud better, right? Maybe a bad analogy, but it's like you have these gifts and you have these superpowers, and a mistake that I made, I'm curious about you, a mistake that I made when me and my friend started the agency together, because we're no longer partners in this as well, but we had the exact same strengths. And I think the reason we got into business together is because we were just afraid to do it ourselves, right? We didn't want, now I can't talk for Brendan, right? This is just for me, but if I failed, I didn't want to be the one to be 100% responsible. So if I had a partner, oh, well then it doesn't make it as bad because then we did it together. But looking back, we had the exact same skills, right? And something that I've learned now is, hey, work on your strengths, right? Work on what you're already good at, and then surround yourself with people who can complement your weaknesses. So just to bring this back to recruiting talent for pioneers, being able to spot those A players, but then also being able to do the same thing with Social Apex, because you guys have some killers on the team who can just cook. And I mean, they are so good at what they do. And personally, I've kind of struggled at spotting those A players from the C players, and I'm getting better about it now, but I'm curious, do you have any specific frameworks or things that you look for when you're recruiting that talent and those A players?
Yeah, 100%. Well, first, I'd love to touch on that point you made about complementary skill sets, because, I think the reason that a lot of us don't lean into our strengths early enough is because we're not told of their strengths. And so we just take them for granted. And you're like, well, yeah, you're good at, like, you can learn well. It's like, that's not a skill. And you're like, no, it is a skill.
It's like the fish in the fishbowl. He may not be able to climb the tree, but he can hold his breath underwater longer than everybody else.
And he can swim way better. And he's like, yeah, but I'm just a fish. Like, it's like, yeah, but it's still a skill. And you can still build on it. So, it's a great call out, because all of my best partnerships and, just setups have been complementary skill sets. So, what comes to mind immediately is like, my teams that I've worked with, right? Like whether it's, Mark and his, expansive experience in the corporate world and understanding how to manage teams and keep things tight and making sure we're, managing the long-term health of the business, which is something that I struggle with. ADHDers their executive functioning is like not super great.
Strong start, poor follow through.
Right. And so having someone to hold me accountable for that had more experience working in the business world, and then, having other people, like Quincy and Darius, other people that opened me up to, Quincy was the one who, taught me how to shoot, video and edit. And, Darius showed me how to be a better person and to be a better connector, and to be more excited about sharing and connecting with people. And so, as owners and founders, you don't always get along, right? And some of those founders leave and some of those owners leave. But the ones that stay oftentimes are this yin and yang, right? Where they're complementing each other, because a lot of times if you have the same skill set, there is a much higher likelihood of butting heads than if you had different skill sets, at least in my experience.
Now, do you think it's because the skill sets also typically have similar personality profiles?
I think that's probably true, but I also think that most of the time, I think that there's a lot to do with ego as well, right? So if you are both doing the same thing, there can come a time where you're like, well, I'm doing it better than you. Like, it causes this, thing where it's like, dude, I suck at, X and you're great at it. Like, go crush it. Like, I don't, And so when you relate it to staffing, a lot of the people that we have hired at Social Apex and at Pioneers have gone on to do other great, amazing things. People at Social Apex have gone on to found, multiple different, very successful businesses, multi-million-dollar endeavors. People that have gone, even most recently, one of our people went to NASCAR, from Social Apex. One of our team members went out to one of the bigger media agencies in sports, right? And we take pride in that, right? We want to build people up. And same with Pioneers. We have players that we signed when they were 13 years old. They're now 20, winning world championships, right? And we've taken home $1 million and some change. But what I look for, and what Mark and I look for especially, is technical skills can be taught, right? Sometimes you have a savant, fine. They're very rare. And frankly, I haven't met any yet in real life. There's some people that are really, really good, but I've never met an Elon Musk, at least in Kansas City yet. So I think the thing that we look for that's really been of benefit to us is we focus on finding people that love what they do. We focus on people that are great communicators, that are good team players, that are respectful, that have integrity, that operate with honor. Those things cannot be taught. Those are characteristics of people that have grown up in the right environments. Whether it was a challenging childhood or a great childhood, as long as they come out and they're great people, we know that they can be of value as long as they show an interest in what we're doing, right? So some of our people that are at Social Apex today, a lot of the stuff we talk about is like, there's no ego in here. When something needs to get changed or something needs to be better, there's no, oh, well, I thought it looked good. It's like, we're here to do a job, right? And as long as you have good people that trust each other, Mark likes to say, assume good intentions. People can make mistakes. People can miss deadlines. People can whatever, but it's like, communicate. Let me know. Make sure that you're communicating with me. And it's like, you can get better, right? And so a lot of the people we promote internally are like, we'll start out with like, a very part-time job. And I'm like, this guy or girl is crushing it. And I just like them as a person. They're just a good person, not like as a friend necessarily, although we are, friendly with a lot of our people, but it's more so just like they operate with integrity. I would trust them in a room with my client without me there, right? And so you want to be able, to taking a page from Jocko Willink is like, you want to be able to decentralize leadership. And that doesn't mean that you need to pass off and delegate really high priority responsibility items, like, because that's not their job. You need to put, again, Mark says this all the time, you got to put star players in star roles, right? And that is what is really challenging, because a lot of times you'll hire some really great person, but they're just in the wrong job. They're in the wrong position. So we focus on making sure we're pulling down barriers, pulling down all of the friction so that our people can focus on creating, because that's what they were hired to do, right? And so that's what elicits some of the best product. And it's the same with the pioneers, right? We want to find people that, are committed, that understand what we are about, understand our vision. And if they go on to do crazier things or different things, we're stoked for them. I am still well connected with BeastMode and Drawley and the guys that are winning championships, as I am with all of the people mostly that have left Social Apex, because we're about curating and connecting and building. We're not about limiting, right? Because if you limit people because you're worried they're going to leave, you're going to have a shitty business, right? You can't be focused on that. You have to be focused on finding people that are committed to your long-term vision. And when it's their time, it's their time.
That's awesome, man. So one thing I want to touch on, because I think this is one of the biggest holdups that stops people from getting started, right? It was for me, and that's why I had Brendan come on as a partner. But this is the Underdog Chronicles. So we got to talk about some more failures too.
Okay.
So you launched a brand that failed, right? Mm-hmm. And I know for me, I've done that before too. And even when clients, for example, like they don't work out, they don't get the results, or maybe somebody's a hire that doesn't work out. Yep. I will, unfortunately, sometimes, way more than I should, look at myself as a failure as opposed to that situation failing. Mm-hmm. So walk us through the CBD brand.
Yeah.
It was CBD? Mm-hmm. Okay, because I was listening to the UMKC and I was like, is he saying CTE or CBD? And I was like, well, after following Sam, I'm pretty sure it's CBD. So walk us through that story.
Yeah, so at the time, I believe it was around similar time as Pioneers launching. And, we had been working with some CBD brands at the time, and we were like, hey, this is like popping
you guys
off.
were doing American Shaman, right?
Mm-hmm. That was back in 2019, 2020 sometime, actually maybe 2018. But we were like, hey, this is a growing industry, and we feel that CBD is probably pretty beneficial for people, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it's huge in the pet sector right now.
I mean, it's huge, and CBD, CBG, CBA, like there's now all these new cannabinoid research, right? And then obviously there's the downside of it, which is a lot of consumers get taken advantage of. Mm-hmm. And so we wanted to make a brand that, we called it Roots, And we wanted to like build great products. So we had connections to bringing in, just different products and producing, whether it was pre-rolls or other things like that. And I don't remember, unfortunately, how long exactly it was, but after a time, we just realized it wasn't going to work. And it was too labor intensive, costly, and we needed to focus on other endeavors. And so we were like, hey, pack it up. Like, we'll move on. And like the folks that we did it with, like still friendly with, right? Like it was a mutual thing, or like, hey, we are going to move on to the next step. And so that was like the real like business kind of shutting down, but although it was not like fully, launched anyways. So, but more importantly, there were real failures along the way of like building multiple businesses, right? Where you lose contracts, you lose clients, you lose, et cetera, like all the time, right? And I struggled with that immensely, right? Because I was more so just, again, you feel this as well as I do, I'm sure, which is imposter syndrome. And so when you fail, you're like, wow, okay, I'm a fraud. Like that's why we lost this, is because I'm a fraud and a loser. And you realize that type of talk and negative self-talk is just counterproductive, right? Because you don't really lose until you give up. Right? So losing is not permanent unless you just choose to stop playing the game, right?
Have you heard of the infinite game theory? So there's like win and lose games, but the infinite game theory, which relates a lot to business, is like the whole point of the game is to stay in the game.
Yep.
And as long as you're staying in the game, then you're winning.
Yeah. So growing up, I mean, again, talking about synergies and connection pathways, every day that my dad dropped me off at school, he would say one of two things. One of them was make sure you ask a good question, which led to obviously my aptitude for learning and curiosity, which really pissed off my teachers because I had a lot of questions. But the other thing that really stuck with me even more so was he always said, keep shooting, right? Because if the enemy thinks you're dead, then they're going to roll you over, right? You just got to reload, re-engage, and get back out there. And so now, the way that I look at failure and the way that I look at, loss or even trauma or things that are very challenging to work through is you say, well, this is good. This is a chance to get better. Like, this is an opportunity to change what I was doing and maybe sharpen my sword to be prepared for a better battle. And so I really choose to make sure that I always embody that feeling because, one, there's a lot that you can prevent in terms of failure by better communication, organization, and structure, right? So a lot of times we fail and lose not because we were bad, but because we just we're not communicating enough with so-and-so or with a team member or with a client, et cetera. So there's a lot that you can prevent. But additionally, when you do fail, sometimes it's because you made a mistake. Sometimes it's because you didn't make a mistake. One thing that I recently was actually, reading, it's called Thinking in Bets by Annie Duke. She's a famous poker player. I don't know if you're familiar.
A movie after her, right?
Yep. So her book, I literally just read it, but it was basically how, all decisions are bets, right? And you have to make sure that your bets are well calculated. And
probabilities,
and you have to allocate a certain level of responsibility to the high probability bets. And what does that mean? Well, you can make all the right choices and still have a poor outcome, just as you can make all the bad choices and have a good outcome. So instead of grading your impact, value, etc. on the result, it should be based on your choices and what you did. Because, for example, you can go into a hand with pocket aces and you can lose on the river. Does that mean you shouldn't bet pocket aces? No. But if you bet your pocket aces incorrectly, that is your fault. Right? And so that's that mindset. That's just a different way for me to think about the same things we've already been practicing, which is really observe and understand what you're doing in the process and what the result will be, right? And then if you have a bad result, oftentimes you can fix it. But a lot of times people will say, well, I did everything right. And I don't know, it just didn't work. And instead of saying yeah, you sucked at this one thing, fix it. But people want to be victims. People don't want to actually solve problems. People don't actually want to get better. A lot of them. And that's a generalization, but in my experience, a lot of people are afraid to say that I I'm shitty at this. I might be a loser. I might suck at my job. I might be lazy. I might be a loser. But the problem is they don't confront that, and it doesn't give them a chance to change it, right? Because none of it is permanent. And we just fail, in our current day and age to, it's all about this participation trophy sort of mentality, which is important in some areas. But at the end of the day, if you're not going to tell yourself that you suck in the mirror, you're never going to get better, right? And again, just like losing, sucking is temporary as long as you take strides to be better.
Yeah. You said you read Jocko's book, right? Is he the one that said when you give away, or when you're a victimhood, it gives away all your power?
I don't know specifically, but I'm sure it sounds. Okay. His book is called, one of them is called Extreme Ownership.
Yes.
So it's basically and we apply this in every element of our business. Everything bad that happens at any of my businesses is my fault. Anything good that happens at my business is my team's fault. Because I chose to do this. They chose to come here. It is not their responsibility to take on and shoulder the burden of failure. That is you. You started this company, right? And so that's how you protect your people and protect your star players, because they were brought to do a job. And if you didn't do your job, that's why they failed. It's not them, right? If they missed a deadline, it's because you didn't communicate enough. If they didn't make the right product, it's because you didn't brief it well enough. If you didn't sign the right deal, it's because you didn't do enough prep work, right? And so we always make sure Mark and I especially, think about everything when we look at our end of year recaps is what can we do better, and how do we amplify our star players and give them what they need? Because like I said, and it's important to reiterate, anytime, if you are an entrepreneur, if you fail at a task, at a client, at a project, that is your responsibility. If you win, that is a product of your team and not you. And I see so many people get it wrong, and that's fine, right? But some of the greatest people, the most successful entrepreneurs and the most happy entrepreneurs are the ones that offload the responsibility of failure to themselves, and they onload or on-ramp the praise to their team, who ultimately is the one that's helping you actualize your vision.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy too, because when you have that victimhood mentality and you put the blame on somebody else, it gives away your power.
Yep.
So now you can't change, and you're going to be stuck in that scenario, right? But I think you touched on a really, really good point between the star players and the probabilities, right? You can have all the right people on the bus. And actually, Warren Buffett talks about rowing in the right boat and the right direction, right? You can have all the best rowers, right? But if you're on the wrong boat and you're going the wrong direction, it doesn't matter how good your players are, it's never gonna get there. And 100%. It reminds me of this other quote. I'm full of random quotes.
No, I love it.
But you could have a level 10 opportunity in a level 2, you could have a level 10 skill set in a level 2 opportunity. So have you ever heard of the story of the father who gifts his daughter a really old, beat-up, used car for her graduation? So the story goes like this. Daughter graduates from high school, college, and the dad has this old car that he's been keeping forever. And he says, hey, for your graduation gift, I'm gonna give you this car. What I need you to do is I need you to go and I need you to shop it around at 3 different spots who will offer to buy it. So she says, okay, Dad, goes to the first spot. The person's like, this used car, it's so old, it's musty, it's a bunch of junk, I'll give you $500 for it. So she goes back to her dad, she says, I don't think this is gonna work out. He says, well, you still got 2 more shots. So she goes to the second one. Same thing. The guy can maybe do a little bit, he's like, I'll give you $1,000. Goes to the third one. The third one happens to be a collector of that specific car in that specific year. And he says, I'll give you $50,000 for that car. Where the exact same thing was only going for $100, or $1,000 or $500. And one of our friends actually, he recently got out of ministry, and he had this skill set that he didn't think was a skill set, going back to theater. You didn't think back in the day, I didn't think back in the day that being able to flip around and perform in front of a crowd or being able to sing on stage was gonna do anything to me nowadays, right? But he was able to take the video and audio skill in ministry, and after he burned out, he actually turned it into a similar business to what you're doing now, and he's just blown up. So to your point, right, thinking in probabilities and bets and how well will this work out, right? Having the right team rowing the right boat in the right direction, I think is huge.
100%. Yeah, I think it's all about, direction, and that's your responsibility to see things before they come, right? Because again, your team generally, if they're not founders and owners, did not sign up to steer the ship. They signed up to help build it or, do the ancillary things that help it function. But they didn't say, oh yeah, hire me, I'm going to shoulder all the burden of like running a business. So it's like, it's the same thing that you apply on the client side, right? Where it's like, we choose who we work with. We have a luxury now where we get to decide who we work with. We want to do cool shit with cool people. And so if I choose to work with a client, I chose to do it. So I don't get to, and my team doesn't get to feel some type of way when we have an extra edit or an extra thing or whatever, right? Like that's where you like, I chose to do this. And it's, I'm sure you've seen this a lot where it's like freelancers will be like, oh, I'm sorry, I was working on another client project, so I'll get to you. It's like, okay, dude. Like, no, every client needs to be important. And if you weren't ready to take that client on, that's not their responsibility or fault. So also, one, you shouldn't even be saying that. And secondly, if you couldn't facilitate the project, don't take it, right? And so you choose to do all these things. And going back to your original point, most people, talking about poor hires, most people don't want to make that change. Again, I make mistakes. I am a fallible person. Even when I make all the right choices and I fail, as it happens all the time, right? In personal and professional, like I still beat myself up. So I'm talking to myself too. But it's like a lot of times people just want to bitch and they want pity because drama in your personal life is a lot more interesting than sitting in the lab for 6 months building something that might not work. Right? They manufacture drama in their lives. They manufacture drama with their friends. They watch drama and slop online because it facilitates that trigger in their mind that they would be getting if they just applied themselves to the things that they love, right? And so I think that you're keying into the exact point where it's like, I want to work with people who realize that they are special, that they have something to do on this earth, that they have a purpose, and that most importantly, we all remember that we are absolutely, unequivocally blessed to be able to be alive, to have this chance, whether it's 30 years or 70 years, to be on this planet at this time in the sun with a chance to do whatever we want. And so people that choose to be, negative or, apathetic or upset about everything, about politics, about this, about how everything is horrible and everything is terrible, I don't associate with, because that is not how I choose to live my life and the prism that I want to look through as I grow old and look to start family and have children, right? Like, that is not how I want to operate. I want to be around people that are grateful for every moment on this planet, not because we're so special and so different and unique. It's that you are alive. You got a chance when so many other people didn't, and so many people got shitty chances, and you got a good one. You're in America. And despite your feelings about how shitty America is, let me tell you, as a son of an immigrant, it's way shittier in mostly everywhere else in this world for any sort of independence, right? And so to spit on your independence and to spit on the blessing of being here with a chance to be something and to be great and to change lives is an affront to everything that I believe in.
Yeah, man. I mean, it takes the same amount of effort to be happy and put your energy towards something that will grow and water that seed that it does to be negative and upset, right? Choose your hard. It's hard being fat, it's hard getting in shape. But either way, both of them are hard, right?
Well,
so which one?
And you know what's really funny that you made me just remember is like going back to physics, right? So I'm a big physics nerd and astrology, astronomy, etc. Like all this different stuff.
What's your star sign?
I'm a Taurus Gemini cusp.
Okay.
I
thought there was only
one. To be fair,
one.
I don't believe in like that super deeply, but I'm like, okay, there's some similarities with me.
It's a full moon. Everybody's acting a little wild.
Yeah, there's maybe something there, right? Like, but when we think about physics, right? We more importantly think about the properties of thermodynamics. One of the properties and the laws of thermodynamics is the fact that matter cannot be created or destroyed, it's only repurposed, right? So, with that being said, when you decide to create something, whether it's an album, a piece of art, a business, etc., the scale of what you are building is creating an imbalance in the universe. And subsequently, you will experience the exact amount of negative resistance to the size and scope of what you are trying to build. So let's say you're trying to create an opera. Your mom might get hit on the side of the road. Your family friend may pass away. You're trying to build one of the greatest companies in the world. All your family is calling you Hollywood, and your wife breaks or divorces you and tries to take half your money, or you go bankrupt. I think we fail to remember that the challenge and the difficulty is a natural law of physics in life for every single structure in our world. And so when you want to create something, you damn well better be sure that you remember that the amount of negative energy that's keeping you from doing it is proportionally, like, it is a function of this universe, and it's not something to be afraid of. It's actually your compass, right? Because when we look at video games, another thread, if you are going in the right way, what do you see? Enemies, obstacles, puzzles. If you don't run into the boss, you're not moving through the game.
You took the words right out of my mouth. The
right?
boss at the final level.
Right. And so you should have challenge. You should have pain. You should have suffering. Shit should be hard. Not because life is hard and this stupid anecdote. It's because that is what it takes to create. When you bring something positive, it will be met with the exact same amount of energy, and that is not a dysfunction of the universe. That is a primary function, and it is a signal for you to continue, right? It is not signal for you to give up.
Yeah. And was it Sir Isaac Newton who said an object at rest will stay at rest until acted on an outside force?
Yep.
Right? And it's kind of like, all right, in the beginning, when you're rolling that boulder up the hill, that's when the resistance is there the most, right? But as you get to the top and as that hill starts to go over, you're able to see that momentum build to eventually the point where it's running. As long as the outside force doesn't stop that momentum, you're able to continue building and building and building. But that first step is always the hardest.
Exactly. And also you're rewiring neural pathways, right? So a lot of the times that I talk to people is, when you're trying to change habits or if you struggle with addiction or mental health issues, like the first 30 days are always the hardest. Why? You're rewiring your brain, right? Neuroplasticity does not stop at 25 or whatever they say. It goes for forever. And old dogs can learn new tricks. It just becomes a little bit harder. But that's what I tell everyone is like, look, you are experiencing a resistance because you are changing the way you think, in the resistance, similar to the resistance you feel when you're lifting weights, is changing you and evolving you into the person you want to become, right? So when people that work out are like, oh God, the 30-pound dumbbell's so hard, like I'm just done, I'm stopping here. That's it. It's like, no, that's the point. You're supposed to tell your body it's not strong enough. Get bulked, MF. Like, let's get a little bit more muscles, right? And it's the same with your personal life, right? It's always the hardest at the very beginning, but we have to build the framework and the mental fortitude to understand that this is part of it. This is part of the game.
That's awesome, man. So speaking of building momentum, right? Vision, mission. What's the next 5 to 10 years look like, man? I know you guys got some cool stuff cooking over there.
Yeah. For me personally, I have a wife. She's been my rock. I would never, be here today sitting here without her, right? Not only emotionally support, but also like, when we were first starting in our first few years, like I made almost nothing, right? So we've been living off of her real job for a long time, and she believed in me when I was a nothing burger. And so I owe her, everything. And I'm grateful for that. And I'm looking forward to, hopefully soon, starting a family. And I'm very excited about that actually. And just like I'm getting to a point where I'm still fallible, I'm still making mistakes, obviously, but I'm in a place where I feel like I can help bring somebody into this world and maybe give them a chance to be better than me. And that's what makes me excited. Like, of course, I want to have children and do the American dream thing, right? But it's more about like I have a responsibility to bring people into this world that, one, can appreciate its greatness, but also leap over me into greater and better things. And so I know that my wife and I have the capacity to build that life together, and it's why we were, when I first met her, it's like we're very different people too. Like we're very complementary, but we have very different likes and dislikes, and sometimes they overlap. But I'm like, that's what makes a great partnership, is you share those different things. So that's kind of where I'm at personally. But professionally...
Real quick, just speaking about law of thermodynamics. How old are you?
I'm 29.
29? Okay, so I had my daughter at 25.
Okay.
And dude, the amount of energy that goes into raising the child, I look around and, she goes to daycare with some other kids and these parents are like 45 years old and this is their first kid and you can just see the energy's like sucked out of them. So yeah, I think you're on the right track of having it at this age. Because I think males, like our hormones are the best between 28 and 32.
Yeah.
So we should be having the most energy, aside from probably when we're in high school, but like theoretically, we should be having the most energy right now, which I think is the perfect time to have a kids.
Yeah, and we always joke that, I had multiple children in my businesses that I had to nurse into young adulthood. But at the same time, eventually it's like, you got to just do it, right? Like it's never going to be a perfect time, as the freaking cliche, right? All my family's like,
hey, same with starting a business, dude.
What are you going to do? I'm like, inflation, these things, like just give me a sec. But professionally, what I'm excited about doing is continuing to grow both of my businesses and, eventually in the next 5 to 10 years, my goal is to continue to expand what we're doing, continue to expand our businesses, and most importantly, like, yes, I want to work with more awesome clients, but really what I want to do is keep growing so that I can bring more great people in and give them a chance to participate in this mindset, right? Like I want to build Social Apex and Pioneers up to 2-3 fold or whatever it looks like so that more great people can participate in this kind of ecosystem that we've built, this energy, this creativity. And that gets me excited, is like, I want more people that are great people to have a chance to be the best version of themselves. Not saying that I do that for them. It's like we built a framework, but I'm like, it gets me excited where I'm like, I want to find amazing people that are good people that make an impact and give them a chance to be even greater, right? Like, and it has nothing to do with me, right? Like I don't take credit for other people's success, and it's like, that was all them. But additionally, I want to look into, getting into personal speaking. I want to get into, more high-level startup involvement, investment, things like that. So, I'm almost 10 years into building a couple different businesses, and finally getting to a point where I think I might know a couple things here and there. But I'd love to, be able to invest, whether it's my time or capital, into different people. So just like I want to grow our businesses so more people can participate in this energy that we've built, I also want to be a different type of investor and operator and advisor and mentor to people, where I'm able to actually give them, very, radical candor, as we call it, right? Like very good feedback, advice, and just give them pure signal, whether that's in the form of resources, whether that's in the form of guidance, advice, because the way that we operate our business, I feel, has a lot of application elsewhere. So as we continue to grow Social Apex, as we continue to grow the Pioneers, we're going to be looking at, engaging in creating new ventures. We're going to be looking at engaging in creating new partners, investing in new opportunities. Now that's, down the road. I still have to, focus my time on building these businesses here. But as I look to ahead, like, it's really just a slightly different path, on the same journey, which is like, I want to help great people connect to others, right? I want great founders building great things to get the respect, to get the attention they deserve. Like, I want, every great author, every great principal, every great product, like, when I find them, I get this itch to show everyone it. And that's who I am. And so that's who I want to continue to be. And I just hope to be able to have just more of an impact, right? And Social Apex and Pioneers, I can help people in those ways, right? Whether it's a client of a marketing team, or it's a sponsor or a partner or a brand partner, Pioneers. But eventually, I would love to be able to invest even more and provide even more assistance to people that I believe in. Because at the end of the day, I think about, what do we owe to each other? And that's something that sits with me a lot. And it's because it goes back to that feeling of blessing of being alive. And it makes you think about, like, how many people are out there today that are building and no one gives a shit and no one is helping them and no one sees them. And that like actually gives me physical pain to think about all these founders that are actually building great things, not slop, not some dumb, like note taker app of the 20th iteration or whatever. Not that I'm thinking of any particular application, but it's more of just like, I want to be there for as many people as I possibly can, not to take credit, not to be some, whatever. It's because I want more great people to find success and happiness. And if I can do a small part in doing that, then that means that I can die that day and know that I did everything I could to make the world a better place.
Man. So if someone wants to get connected, whether because they love the mission that Social Apex is on and they want to be a part of it, or maybe they're that next startup venture who is just, they want that radical candor from Sam. How can they find you and get connected with your story?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, TikTok, all the things.
What's your gamer tag?
Gamer tag is Cooley. I take my last name. I'm not cool anymore to do the different numbers and all that stuff. So mine's just Cooley, my nickname. But you can find me on any of those sites. It's just my name, Sam V. Kulikov. Same on LinkedIn. You can find me just with my name. And you're more than free to reach out to me. I connect with a lot of people. I have a lot of mentors at UMKC, mentees. And I'm just interested in helping people. And the one thing that I ask, the one thing that is important to me when it comes to folks reaching out is, obviously with the understanding of like, I don't know everything. Like, I'm not even 30 yet. Like, I still have so much to learn. So like, I don't have all the answers. I do have some answers. And maybe some of them are good. Maybe some of them aren't good for you personally. But the one thing that I ask is like, if you reach out, if you connect, whether it's to me or other people, just be authentic. Don't try and pretend that it is a certain way or isn't a certain way. When you are authentic, I know and I can tell. And there are people that will reach out to me and they will tell me, maybe how something I did helped them notice something. And they're like, and I don't even care. Like, I don't even need to talk to you. I just wanted you to know that. And then what does that do? It makes me want to reach out and help, right? Because when all these business people and folks and again, I'm not even that, big of a figure, but there's even bigger figures. They're getting hit up in email and LinkedIn every day. So when you reach out to someone, just make sure that you're putting it out on the table. You're letting them know how you feel. You're letting them know what you love, what you like. It doesn't have to be a huge, monologue, but just make sure you're being authentic, because it makes it much easier for me to understand not only what your motivations are, but also understand how I can help you versus, hey, can we get a coffee, right? So, yeah. Which is very ambiguous. So
yeah. Well, dude, it's been a pleasure, and I can tell everything you guys got going on is super authentic. So, dude, it's been a pleasure, and thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, man.